Hello, and welcome to Forget What You Learned, a place for families to stop and reflect on the modern state of education. We empower you to challenge your own thinking about today's traditional school system and ask the question, are my kids thriving? I'm Cory Greenberg, a parent in the trenches just like you, and I chat with innovators, experts, and other parents who are changing the conversation, inspiring families to reevaluate how we define academic success. This podcast is brought to you by Preparatory, who is molding education through innovative one-on-one learning for students in today's digital world. What if the thing that finally makes personalized learning real is artificial intelligence? In this episode, we sit down with educator, author, and futurist Carl Hooker, whose book, Learning Evolution, The New Era of AI in the Classroom, takes a thoughtful, grounded look at how AI is transforming education and what we risk if we ignore it. Carl doesn't just talk about tech, he talks about teaching and how AI, when used well, can actually free up more time for the things that matter most: student connection, creativity, and critical thinking. We talk about both the promise and pitfalls of AI in schools, how to scaffold its use in thoughtful ways, and what needs to shift in both classrooms and mindsets to keep human intelligence at the center of education. If you're curious about what AI means for the future of learning, this episode is a must listen. Hello, and welcome back to the show. Today's guest is someone who lives at the very intersection of innovation, technology, and human-centered learning. Carl Hooker is a veteran educator, speaker, and author of Learning Evolution, The New Era of AI in the Classroom. With over 25 years of experience in education, from first grade teacher to director of innovation, Carl brings a grounded, thoughtful perspective to one of the biggest shifts facing schools today: the rise of artificial intelligence. We're going to talk about what AI can do and what it can't, how teachers can use it as a tool rather than see it as a threat, and what it means to prepare students for a world where human intelligence and artificial intelligence are increasingly intertwined. You'll hear Carl's take on academic integrity, student creativity, equity, and how AI might finally make personalized learning a reality. Let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Carl.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I have heard you on multiple podcasts. You are really out there talking about this, and I'm so excited to talk to you about it today. One of the quotes that I heard from you, which I really liked, I thought we could start with is, you said, we are sort of designing this plane as we build it.
Right.
Nobody really knows, where this is going to go. So I don't know, just let's get into it. Tell me what you're thinking about AI in education these
Yeah,
days.
I harken back to when you say I've been in education for more than 25 years. I just did the math on that. That means that I started teaching in the 1900s, which makes me sound super old. I'm not that old, but I am. I don't know, I started thinking back to like social media, and it's almost there's some similarities here because I think in the past, we would adults quote unquote would learn about some sort of new innovation, and then they would maybe use it in schools. But like in the case of social media, we all kind of learned about it at the same time: kids, adults, everybody, right? And I think AI is very similar in the sense that we're learning little bits as we go. There's some people already out there kind of doing some new kind of cool things with it. And then there's also the other camp that's like, let's exercise caution and concern because we're not sure, like where exactly is, where's all this data going, and what, when is it going to become Terminator? That's always
Yeah.
like the number one question I get when I ask teachers, like, what's your biggest concern? It's like, it's gonna take over the planet. And I'm like, okay, that's one concern.
Or the Matrix, or we're all gonna be
Or the
just in
Matrix,
little
or
pods. Yeah.
iRobot, or
Mhm.
War Games. I mean, it's funny, all the way back to, if you think 1967, the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey was like, the computer. Not to spoil it for our listeners, but the computer basically trying to get the astronaut and kill him. And this is, I mean, that was decades ago, but all of that plays into our own kind of psyche when it comes around AI.
Yes, absolutely. And so when it comes to AI in education, you do a lot of talking to teachers and sort of educating them, reassuring them that this really can be used as a tool, as I said in the intro, not not as a threat. So maybe we can start there. Like, in what ways? People probably know in what ways we can use it as a tool, but maybe
Sure.
we could run through like some of the more creative ways that teachers are using and can use AI as a tool. And then we can sort of talk about the threat piece.
Yeah, well, and actually, I can answer both those questions with one because what I've started doing is, as a primer to my talks when I get up on stage, I do this thing called karaoke, which is I use AI image generators to take lyrics from a song and create images based on the song, and it's always the first kind of icebreaker. And I have these images of, this girl is on fire or whatever, and it's just pictures. And then the audience has to guess what the song is, and then I play the song for them. So music kind of ties in everybody. There's a little bit of commonality there. And then I also show them like, by the way, this is a creative use of AI. I didn't. It would have taken me hours and days to draw each of these pictures out graphically, or even on pencil and paper. And so immediately it kind of disarms everybody because as a collective, again, we all have the shared experience of music. We also see like, okay, well, AI does this. That's not terrible. So trying to give a creative idea to start is always a big thing for me. I did this talk, I think it was in front of 400 superintendents last year, and that was what I used right off the bat. And immediately a few of them came up to me afterwards like that immediately made me feel at ease because they were
Mm.
all had this nervousness and concern, and there still is, and there still should be, by the way. And I always acknowledge that too. You should never ever just be like, oh, it's all going to be great. We never want to go to the extreme of like, yeah, we'll just let it do whatever we want it to do. No, there should always be some cautious, guardrails there, especially in education, because when it comes to everything, it's our personal data, it's our student data. I mean, that's what we hold near and dear, second only to learning of the student learning. So I think for me, it's have that caution, but then also there are some creative ideas. So yeah, that's one. And that again, that came to me just I was just thinking like, God, what would happen if? And I think that happens more and more with AI, and we're starting to see that more teachers are coming up with like, well, what if I wanted to make, maybe I had a student who's struggling with a certain concept, but he really likes rap music. So I'm going to create a song using something like Suno or Magic School or something. I'm going to make a song that makes sure it has these particular words because we're learning about cell division, maybe about mitosis or something like that, and make sure it's folded into the song so he gets the idea of what it is. And then in 5 minutes, you've created a song, and the kid can listen to the song. Now, it's not going to be a number one hit on TikTok anytime soon, but at least it gives them, for some listeners or some students, that's a different way to learn. Maybe they're an auditory learner. So I like that potential for it. The what if, and I think we're still in that phase. Like what else could it do? Maybe when it comes to that creativity.
Yeah, exactly. And you have lots of examples in your talks about creative ways we can use it. And I kind of like how you describe it. It's almost like reverse engineering where you
Yeah.
create the AI, but then you try to like deconstruct it. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do right now is I use a couple different tools with groups of teachers and students too, to be candid. And it's the first one is Say What You See, which is a Google Lab experiment. Essentially, it's a website where it shows an image, and then you have 120 characters to try to figure out the prompt of what made that image. And so this is early prompting, early prompt discussions with students, but also cause them to be creative and critical thinkers, and they also have to be very descriptive in their language, which is again some of the concerns with AI is that it takes some creativity away. Um, and then what I do is I say, okay, now we're going to take that to the next level, and we're going to show you a picture of like a beach ball floating in a pool somewhere. Now I want you to recreate that image as best you can. I try to do things that are non personal, so just like objects and things like that. And then one of the fun ones I've done as an icebreaker is I'll say, give me your 5 favorite things when it comes to favorite food, favorite place, favorite let me see. Favorite color, favorite place to visit, and I think I already said that one. And then hobby. There's probably one other one I missed in there. Food, maybe I don't know. Anyway, I'll do five. Let's just say 5 interests, and they say now just put that into a prompt. Like say, hey, draw a picture of
Mm.
these 5 things kind of coming together, and then if they have their favorite animal in there, it's like a tiger eating a pizza on the beach while reading a book, or and it's fun. And so I show the image up to the group, and I say, okay, now let's deconstruct it. Let's reverse prompt it, engineer it, and so we know that the animal was probably a tiger. We know that the food is probably, but what was the hobby? And they're like, well, maybe it's the book because it's a beach, or maybe they're swimming because they're. And so great discussions comes as a result of that. So I think that yes, the outputs are neat and exciting, but I also love the process and the creativity that happens because of it, and that critical thinking that happens, which I think if you just take it all away and don't use it, then you're losing out on that as well.
Yes, I do love that, and I totally see how it taps into that critical thinking, that is necessary, that I think is the other fear you mentioned, that everyone, teachers
Yeah.
included, have about having lost that. So, in terms of foundational skills, so that this is sort of related, like if you think of a student who has to learn their times tables and all the mental, effort and repetition that it takes to develop those skills. And if you go instead of that, you go straight to the calculator, that's kind of an analogy for this AI. So can you talk about like what do we need to do as people, as educators to kind of prevent that easy
Yeah.
way out thing from happening in the classrooms?
Well, I think first you have to. I mean, calculator is a great example, right? Because when we started using calculators at mainstream, let's say in the late '80s, that's when all of a sudden students could do deeper calculations, but they still needed to have the foundational understanding of how adding, subtracting, multiplication, all that worked. So I think with AI, it's going to be the same thing, only in almost any area now. So for teachers, what I always say is that we need to structure it. So there needs to be a scaffolding approach. One is like, all right, let's use AI, but only for a small part of learning today. Let's say we're going to use it for the brainstorming part of what we're doing. So I'm going to let AI brainstorm some ideas for me. I'm still going to create the paper, create the project, create whatever it is, but AI is going to help as a brainstormer, and then that's it. And everything else I'm going to do is a human part. And then let's say a few weeks later, you do another project, and maybe you want AI to um, be the editor or the thought partner. So now the student puts their first draft that they've done themselves into AI and have it give them some suggestive feedbacks, and then use it. And what I like is that one teacher started using it in this way. She said she's using it as an editor, as a peer reviewer, but she's also having two other students do peer review because that's also a skill, giving critical feedback. And we don't want to just say, okay, AI can do it because AI is not a person and it will be impersonal, which is nice because it's just going to give you feedback and you can get mad at it or not because it's not a person. But then having a couple students give feedback too, then all of a sudden you're seeing again a good mixture of a little bit of AI, but also still teaching the kids and making sure they're using those skills. So I think the way we scaffold it in schools is we say selectively, like, here's how we're going to use it today for this project, and then we're going to pull back everything else is going to be used in the humanistic realm, let's say. And so I think we just continue to use it for different parts of that learning. I don't think at any point do you ever just say, have AI do the whole thing for you from beginning to end. Although I have a professor, and I've said this on other podcasts, but I have a professor friend who's done this where he takes his tells the students to have AI write the whole paper for them, and he says, "I'll give you it's about a B minus is what AI can write, by the way, right now when you talk about college level essays." And then he says, "Now I want you to improve it. I want you to improve on what AI gave you because AI is not ever going to be 100% great. It's always going to be close, but not quite close enough. And it's getting better, but I think making it hard, it makes it tougher for the student in some ways too. It's like, wow, now I have to be smarter than AI, and I have to figure out where its fallacies were, where the misinformation was. That to me is kind of a neat way of doing it. And that professor told me that it was the best papers he's ever received. It was the students had to
Wow.
learn deeper because they had to be smarter than artificial intelligence. So I love that idea of like, okay, embrace it, but I'm going to make you be better than it too at the same time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I watched a YouTube video of this college professor. Basically, she said she was teaching a very high level, I think it was a writing class, but she said all of the students' assignments throughout the semester were very good. And then they got to the final exam and they bombed the exam. And she took that as evidence that they
Ah.
had been using ChatGPT all along, and when it got to the final where that was not possible, it turns out they did not really, absorb all of the content.
Yeah, and think about that for a second too. I mean, let's think about the output. Like, I don't know how she evaluated the students. Was it a final paper or was it a test?
You know
Um,
what? Actually, it was a math class, so it was
okay,
all the assignments and the homework were good, and then the final exam, they bombed.
yeah, so they probably use like photo math or something to help them reverse. Basically, you take a picture of the problem and it'll solve it for
Yes.
you. Um, what's interesting about that is I had this discussion with a friend of mine who's writing a book on, he calls it uncheatable assessments, and I kind of pushed back on him a little bit. I was like, oh, but when I looked at the book, it wasn't that. I think we traditionally think of assessments as what, you're sitting down and you're going to take this test and it's multiple choice or it's fill in the blank, or you're sitting down, you're going to write a final paper, right? There's so many other ways we can evaluate what kids know. And I think what I'm hoping is coming out as a result of AI is that we're going to learn more about, hey, maybe get up in front of the class and I want you to share what you know about this. We're going to ask you 5 questions and that's it, and that's your exam. I mean, it's an oral exam because then you have to know your stuff, right?
Yeah.
Doing a presentation, sure, AI can design the slides, but you still have to get up and communicate that you know what you're talking about. So I think there's going to be lots of different ways that now assessment's just going to grow and be a little more expansive, and we're going to start taking more of a portfolio of work, which I think, again, in educational circles, this is not new. Everybody out there, I mean, we've been talking about we should do portfolios. That's the best way, and it is. I mean, it actually gives you kind of a holistic idea, view, and landscape of where a kid has grown, because it evaluates the process of learning versus the final product of learning. And I'm hopeful that that'll start to take off more, just because I think for me, I mean, I think that, having a portfolio, whether it be the student getting the reflection of actually going in and putting in their work, which is also a very important part of learning, or even a teacher seeing, oh my goodness, from September to May, you grew this amount. Let's look at that and celebrate that growth, versus just, okay, here's another paper, grade, go, another paper, go. So that's my hope, that we're shifting more toward that kind of holistic assessment and kind of process-based assessment.
Yeah, and that actually makes me think of what probably is already in talks of changing, but definitely will change is the college application process. I mean, these college essays,
They all
I
look the same now, don't they? Because they're all written by
they may look the
ChatGPT.
same. Yeah, but I do think that ChatGPT has gotten so much better so
Oh,
quickly,
yeah.
in terms of, like, you and I were talking about how well it gets to know you.
Yeah.
And so it's I don't know, it doesn't seem that far-fetched to say like, "Oh, we can't actually tell if this was written by ChatGPT or not."
Well, and then let's talk about that. Why does it matter at that point? I mean, if a student is the one designing the prompt and putting in all the work and training the AI, the amount of time and energy, I mean, you and I talked about this before. A
Yeah,
couple years we've been playing with this thing. That's a lot of time invested in a tool to know us a little bit better. Well, what if then we've discovered a great prompt to get us to write what we want to write exactly? I would say in some ways it's not really cheating in that sense, because we've actually trained it, and it's trained on our own
yeah.
intelligence and our own vernacular, our own personality in that sense. So maybe the college entrance essay needs to change, or make sure that those questions, the way they're prompting, are just so personal that, I mean, if I ask ChatGPT like, "Hey, what did you do last weekend?" Like, it would just make up something, right? It doesn't know
Yeah.
all the things I did. So again, tying in the prompts to make them a little more personal may be something that college essays need to start changing too.
Yeah, or just have them be sort of live, submissions
Yeah.
or something, I don't know. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, it's you're chasing a tail. If you're trying to, like, again, if you're focusing on a product, as I always tell teachers, like, you're spending all your time trying to chase these kids cheating, and you're using these AI, ironically, AI cheat bots to help detect cheating, which are not, by the way, always accurate. And people have there's lots of stories of kids getting falsely accused.
yeah.
I'm like, then you're missing the big problem here. Two, one is, why do kids cheat? And that's a huge thing that probably needs, it's beyond AI, because I know a lot of kids, I won't say that I was one of them, but wrote some little notes maybe on my hand when I was a kid.
Absolutely, it's a story as old as time.
It's as old
Everybody
as time, and before that, I'm sure they had a big chunk of rock and slate, and they carved on the back of it the notes
absolutely.
from what Socrates was saying. But I think what's funny is, I mean, yeah, we still continue. We don't address it, right? We don't address the fact that academic pressure is a reason why kids cheat, or laziness, or procrastination, or maybe just disinterest in a topic, because we're kind of force feeding them stuff. But if you make it something they're passionate about, there tends to be a lot less cheating. There's not hardly any, actually, because it's like, oh, I want you to. One of the examples I use is like a student who was doing a Latin class and had to create. It was a slideshow over the Roman bathhouse, and so he, instead of making a slideshow over it, he decided to create the world in Minecraft and then voice over it. Now you talk,
Mhm.
that's intense, and there's no way AI could do that, by the way. I mean, create
Yeah.
a world in Minecraft and then also use your own voice to voice over it in Latin. So he was speaking over it. I mean, it would take more work to have AI do it, let's say, than you actually just doing it. Which so I think when you think about that, it's like, okay, good. And the teacher accepted it. It's like, okay, this is a different version. It's not exactly what I asked for, but you're still showing me that you understand the parts of this Roman bathhouse, and you're still speaking Latin, which is what I wanted to get. So I think that's what we have to do, is to start changing again. I think everyone's like, well, the ChatGPT is going to do what do to the five paragraph essay what the calculator did to math. I think it's going to do more than that. I mean, I would hope it would.
Yeah, it's almost like it allows for more creativity, but it also requires more creativity from us as humans and educators to find ways to integrate it without losing those foundational skills.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I mean, if I'm, and I say this to educators too all the time, that's my number one concern. I mean, everyone should have some concerns, and my biggest one is the loss of foundational skills. And so, one thing I've been working on lately is kind of a scaffolding of what does that look like in K2 and what does it look like in three
Mhm.
five? Because honestly, I know that we all know that no kid over under the age of 13 has ever used a tool that's 13 plus, right?
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Sure. I have one in my house that I know. But anyway,
Yeah.
but I think still you could scaffold in K2 talking about just how patterns work, which is something we teach kids anyway in those grades. And that's really what AI is doing, is using patterns to detect the next probable outcome. And then even talking about some of the terminology around AI at that early age. You're not letting the kids use it, but you're still explaining it and exploring it and maybe doing some whole group work around it. So when I taught first grade, I used to read Harry Potter, which didn't have any pictures in it. So, I mean, except for the little drawing at the front of every chapter. And so I would, with the kids go, let's describe, what do you think Hagrid looks like? This big hairy character and da 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 da. And now I could probably use their descriptions and sit there and go, let's put the descriptions into an AI image generator and then ask the kids to reflect. Was that what you had in your mind? Because it may not represent the picture you actually had in your mind. Talk about the
Yeah.
differences. Think about the deeper level stuff that's happening. That's with first graders at that level that you couldn't do before. So I think there's a lot of those little activities and ideas, especially even in the younger grades.
Yeah, I mean, it's kinda like the classic assignment. I think all of my kids did this in kindergarten, where they had to write a step by step on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich,
Yes.
and it's funny because you have to practice being very, very specific. So it's kind of like that skill, and it is very, like, oral. It's an oral communication skill that's
Yeah.
required.
You
So
gave me you
interesting.
gave me PTSDs when you said that, because when I was in 6th grade, I had to true story, I was a straight A student, and, the first F I ever got was in 6th grade because they sent home that assignment that was like a write a descriptive, step by step. It didn't have to be peanut butter sandwich, just something a little more expansive. I think it was a recipe of any sort, and I decided to use a I had this old Panasonic camcorder my parents did. It was like this big old brick. I don't know if your
Oh, yeah,
listeners
I
may
had
remember.
one
It's
of
like,
those too.
yeah, it weighed like 40 pounds soaking
Yeah.
wet. Not soaking wet because it would be destroyed, but and there was no editing software back then. You recorded, and if you screwed up, you had to
Yes.
go back and re-record.
You would record the entire soccer game,
Oh my
you
god,
did
and
no
just it just
highlights.
yeah, it
Yeah.
just stands on a tripod because you get tired of
Yeah.
carrying. Well, so I took that and I decided, instead of doing a recipe card like the teacher had asked, I recorded myself doing a cooking show, and I still have it. It's actually on YouTube still. It's me, a 12-year-old, wildly enough. I mean, YouTube wasn't around back then, but my sister uploaded it to make fun of me. And then I turned it in, and it was like the thing, back then in school, like whenever the teacher went to the library to get that cart, the cart, the TV and
Yeah.
the VCR cart, and wheeled into the classroom, kids got all excited, like, "Ooh, we get to watch a movie today!" Something, something. So the kids were super excited. The students, I remember, just beaming with pride. And I put the video in, and they all liked it, and they clapped, and I thought that was awesome. Then I got my grade, and it was the first F I've ever gotten in my life, and it really took me back, and it made me think, what are we valuing? What's the most important thing in education? Is it following directions, which I do think is important to some extent, or is it actually demonstrating your understanding and knowledge of something, which is what I was doing, just in a different medium?
Mhm.
And I think I didn't know it at the time, but I kind of kept that internal fire going about changes in education all the way through my current part of my career. And it all started because it was, again, I decided to color outside the lines a little bit, and I was
Mhm.
rewarded with what? An F, right? That failure. And it made it devastating. I didn't go to school, to be honest. I didn't go to school for like 2 days because I was
Yeah.
crying. I was distraught. I didn't know what to do. So I thank that teacher in some ways because she motivated me later in life.
My
The wrong
goodness.
way.
Well, I'm sorry to have triggered that memory for
That's
you,
okay.
but it has
You're
a
helping me,
happy
Cory.
ending.
This is good. This is all therapeutic. We're doing this. See, it's because you're human and I'm human. If I was just doing this to an AI bot, it might be like, yeah, that's great, Carl. Let's move on.
Well, that's actually a great segue
Yeah.
because my next question for you is that one of the fears that I hear people have in our field is that AI is going to replace teachers. So why can AI never replace a teacher?
Yeah, and there's actually a great website that's just for fun, but if you ever want to check it out, it's called willrobotstakemyjob.com. It's a real website. And it's not sponsored by me, and there's ads and stuff. So I don't know anything, but I stumbled upon it once, and it's cool because you can actually enter in any job out there and say, what is the percentage likelihood that AI or machine learning will replace it in the next 20 years? When I type in educators, it's always like less than 1%.
Mm.
It's been attempted before, and I think there's a couple different areas. There's a school here in Austin that tried it. Not really tried it, but they advertised they don't need teachers. But the truth is, they had facilitators and coaches, and they used AI to kind of help with the academia. So just helping the kids go through their math and reading and writing. on a computer. And there was another school that infamously tried it back way back when 2009. So we're talking a long time ago. They actually put in an android kind of robot. It was kind of lifelike looking, kind of a rubbery skin, and they put this person in front of a class. And she, let's say with quotes, was basically instructing a class of fifth and sixth graders in Japan, and the teachers and the parents were kind of watching and like, oh, this is interesting. The kids were fascinated, they were captivated, they were so engaged, and so they said, oh, good, we'll leave. So we'll leave. So they leave that morning as the teacher continues, this robotic teacher starts, and when they come back a few hours later, they've tied up the thing. It's like on the floor. They're poking its face. It's saying, no, stop touching me. It's like it can't do anything. I mean, it's total chaos. And so yeah, they were fascinated at first, much like anything we know with kids, right? When it's new, they're like, ooh, this is great. And then the toy goes into the closet, you never play with it again. So in this case, it was very similar. And yeah, I think out of most positions, it's one that's not going to go away. I will say, a teacher that uses AI to enhance their learning and the learning of their students would probably replace a teacher that doesn't at some point. Although right now in our profession, honestly, we're looking for warm bodies and a pulse. So I don't know that
Absolutely.
this is the time, but I do think in some places having that extra skill set to reach and reach the learning of every single student in your class. I mean, we've been talking about personalized learning for decades too, and that maybe it's coming. Maybe this is it.
Yeah, I mean, that's my day job, right? Is we do personalized learning at Pacific Preparatory,
Yeah,
and the one-on-one model is really augmented by ChatGPT because exactly what you said about like, let's make some math problems that integrate Pokemon for a kid that's really into Pokemon,
yeah,
or a kid on the autism spectrum who has this crazy cool interest in military history, and we can design an entire social studies class around that. And so, yeah, I definitely see how it will augment and sort of like highlight the personalized learning piece. And the other thing about it not replacing teachers is that it feels like the human connection in teaching is really fundamental, whether it's in a classroom full of kids or one-on-one with a teacher. Going back to the times of Socrates, there's books available to learn anything you need to learn, but that's not how our human brain and our souls kind of connect to the
right.
material, right?
Yeah, it's easy. What was it? 3 R's? Was it writing, arithmetic, and rigor or whatever? It's really relationships, relationships, relationships. I think those are the 3 R's, and I think that connection. I do think one thing that I've discovered through this journey of AI now is that using it to help automate and augment, like you said, and I think augment is probably a better word. I think automate is nice, but it's
Mm.
it's really not. I mean, it's just making some of those menial tasks go away. It's going to allow teachers to open up and really make those true and honest connections with students. Because if a student's not connected, if they're not engaged, they're not going to learn. And it doesn't mean you have to get up and do like juggle in front of the class to keep them excited about things. It's more about making those honest, true connections with what a student is struggling with at home. This is something that AI will not replace. The fact that, yes, you can take an AI quiz and it can start to adjust based on your responses, but it doesn't know that you maybe skipped breakfast that morning or that your parents got into a fight last night or that you're having a
Yeah.
real issue with your sibling. I mean, all of those human things AI can't detect. And so a teacher, that's our role. I mean, that's we're a coach, we're a motivator, we're empathetic. And I think AI doing it, using it for some of these other things that are maybe those menial tasks, like I said, will open up more of that. So to me, that's what I'm most excited about, and that's the potential for it. And I think that's the direction I'm hoping we're still heading in because we've tried this again. Like we've said, it's been done many times before. And when I rolled out one-to-one iPads, we were the first in the state of Texas to do it way back in 2010. That was back when they just got the camera and they had that fat charging cord, if you remember one of those things.
Yeah.
I remember saying, I wrote a blog saying, yeah, one-to-one is great, but it'd be better to have one-to-one teachers. And then
Mhm.
someone's like, yeah, we could never afford that. I was like, well, this is kind of like a half step. I mean, putting a device in every kid's
Mhm.
hand. But even that wasn't right because that was just like, we're going to take traditional teaching and teach everybody the same, but all now digital. And I was like, that's not really personalized still, right? It's
Yeah.
just the same. So maybe like what you were talking about, adjusting for that Pokemon problem,
Yeah.
that's getting to differentiation, that's getting to personalization, individualization, which I think is a positive outcome.
Yeah, and everyone can have access to it. So it sort of speaks to the equity question, that
Right.
people talk about. Yeah.
And I think that equity is that's another thing, right now I see some schools trying things differently. And I think The challenge with equity is that equity over time, meaning like eventually will everybody have access, I think is important. I think right now what we're seeing is there's some outliers and the demographics, you can read this, find this online too, but generally, I just saw this study last week that like higher socially economic areas tend to have more use of AI tools. It was like something like 82%, I think is what I saw, and in areas that had like 160K or 150, 80K median household or above. And then when you look at the lower ones, it's like it's coming up, but it's like 64%. So it's still there's a gap there. And there's an equity gap, there's a digital gap, there's a learning gap when it comes to AI. And part of it is the teachers in those buildings, particularly in those buildings that are low socioeconomic, aren't getting trained because they're
Yeah.
being told you need to make sure the math scores get higher. You need to make sure the reading scores get higher. So we're going to throw every math and reading thing at you. Oh, and AI is just a fun thing over here. Meanwhile, it could be actually helping the kids, just like project-based learning could actually be helping the kids. But people say, no, they need to teach to the test. Like that's actually the worst thing you can do in some ways.
Yeah, yeah, so again, there needs to be some investment from the top down and sort of training the teachers and kind of how to use the tools. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, there's still, I
Um,
mean, we're still short too. I mean, I think we're, what did I see? It was 46%, I think, of all staff across the country as of now have been trained on some sort of AI. So, I mean, not even half the country's teachers, according to the surveys, at least, I don't know how accurate they are, but have not been trained or had any type of training. They're probably using it on their own now a little bit. But
yeah.
again, there's one thing to use it. It's another thing to actually use it for educational purposes and try to design it to help enhance student learning. And that's a different skill set than just like, oh yeah, I'm going to make a recipe for me tonight at home, or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, as we sort of think about wrapping up, I could talk to you about this topic. I have like 10 more things on my list
Ah,
of things that
let's
we could talk
we'll
about.
ask the AI
So,
Carl. I'll invite him on stage. No, no.
yes. Oh my gosh, I would love that. I would love maybe we need to come back for a part 2.
There we go.
Um, but I do wanna so this season we're doing this segment called Forget This, Try That, and I would love your thoughts on that. This is, I think, very fitting. What do we need to kind of do away with when we think of something outdated in education, and what would you replace it with?
So I had one before we came on, but as through the course of our conversation and my PTSD response to that I'm going to say that we need to forget about failure being a bad thing in
Mm,
education. And I think what's happened is over time, because of the because of the test grades, failure is just treated negatively. What I've learned with my own personal life and in talking with thousands of educators and thousands of students is that failure is a great teacher, and having an opportunity to fail is not necessarily a bad thing. Give space for your students to mess up, give space for them to try something different and fail at it, because then what happens is the learning of recovery, which is so important. If we give kids training wheels on their bike their whole life, and then we send them off into the world and take the training wheels off, when they fall down, they're going to have no idea how to pick themselves back up. So, for me, I think the thing we need to forget about in schools is that failure is a bad thing. I think we need to treat it as part of a learning process. Much like Edison said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. It just took me that many steps to get to the answer. And so for me, I think that's a big shift, and it has to be acceptable because it is a great motivator. It's a great way, failure makes you more creative in a lot of ways. So I think that has nothing to do with AI in some ways, although I will tell you, I mess up a lot with AI too. So again, it's a mindset, right? A mindset shift from I have to be perfect to I can mess up a few times, but eventually I'm going to just keep trying. So for me, that's what we need to forget.
I could not agree with you more on that, and I do feel like the burden of that shift in our thinking does not lie solely with the schools and our educators. I'm sure you agree with me on that. It's all of us as parents as well.
Yes. Oh, we
We
wanna put
need
the
to
little bubble around our kids and don't let them. I have a daily argument with a person that lives in my house that I've been married to for 22 years almost. I won't say her name, but, the same discussion. I was like, "Ooh, natural consequence time,"
Yep,
She forgot my teenager forgot her dress out clothes for dance. I'm like, natural consequence time. No, I gotta run it to the school. I'm like, "Nope."
yeah,
You know what? She won't forget if you if she has to get embarrassed. I mean, not that we want shame and things like that to teach our kids, but it also helps make them better and stronger and more resilient, which again is those skills that we've heard about for the last 10 years that we need more of in our workforce, is that
yeah.
resiliency and adaptability. So yeah, right. Parents, we're we're somewhat the worst for this in a lot of ways.
But, I mean, we put pressure on their kids, but we also do it to ourselves,
Oh,
and we
yeah.
hold ourselves to this impossibly high standard, so it's we all need to give ourselves a break. This is what we talk about almost every episode. It comes back to this,
Grace. Give
in
yourself
this
some
podcast.
grace. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So, okay, well, this was lovely. Can you, Carl, tell everyone, how they can find you? I know you have something else in the works, whether or not you wanna mention that,
Sure.
but, tell people where they can find you.
You can find me at carlhooker.com. My blog is hookedoninnovation.com. I also host several podcasts, Learning Unleashed and Undisrupted being the big two. Yeah, and I've written a book, Learning Evolution, which you mentioned at the outset of the show. It's been out now for a year and a half. I've updated it 3 times because it's about AI, so it has to
Yeah.
be updated a lot. But I'm in the process of writing a book called Zen Gauged, and it's anecdotes for the anxious generation, and it is a kind of a culmination of lots of work of looking at screen time, and AI is a part of it too, and just peer pressure and academic pressure and all the things that make our kids anxious. And then what are the solutions for those students in the classroom? I'm writing the classroom edition now. I'll be doing a parent edition when the classroom one comes out in late June.
That's great. Okay, that's going on my list for sure. So,
Awesome. And thank you for having me on this podcast. I love it.
thank you. Thanks for coming. Like I said, I think this might be one of my favorites because it's a topic we all are talking about as a collective, both just in our human lives day to day and specifically in education. So, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Forget What You Learned, hosted by me, Cory Greenberg. As always, our goal is to allow you to zoom out on the snapshot of your family's life and answer the question, are my kids thriving? We're here to inspire you to make those small and maybe big changes to answer yes. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Pacific Preparatory, an organization committed to educating students with an innovative and holistic approach in today's digital world. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a rating and review. See you next time.